Good afternoon, everybody. Alan Henderson, I'm a small business owner, since been doing that since April of 1982. Had a mini version assignment with the Navajo Nation a few years back, primarily in the 1980s. And then I'm now serving as the interim CEO for the Dineh Chamber of Commerce. I have my assistant here, a co-moderator, Mr. Anthony Martinez. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Anthony? Or do you want, let's just go ahead and go through it, be on standby.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Geri Laughter. I'm the acting town manager with the Kayenta Township. I've been with the township for 10 years. I started as the business site leasing agent, and over the years, the position had changed, and it last was the economic development specialist. So I have a lot of experience in the realm of business site leasing within the Kayenta Township. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Cherilyn Yazzie and she adoko nagahtninshle. Twitzohni bashishchin ado ashihedashanale, and I'm from Delcon. So I'm a small business owner. My husband and I are market farmers, and we grow vegetables and produce on a small acreage of land. So I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Yate everybody a Nick Taylor Unishya. Donna and Nishlinigi a Twitsohni Nishle Tachini Bashichin. My deshkizni dasa chayado hashkana zohat dashanale. I'm from a little town called Kayenta, but currently reside in the Ganado area. I am the CEO of Navajo Nation Shopping Centers. Within the Navajo Nation, there are 13 shopping centers. Shopping Centers owns and operates 9 of those. The ones we don't operate are Chinle, Ganado, Sanders, and Rama.
Thank you, panelists. Now I want to give it over to Mr. Martinez to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Anthony U. Martinez, and I'm a retired university professor and also retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. I'm a member of the Dineh Chamber. I have been for the last 2+ years, and I'm very much engaged in helping in any way I can with economic development. I'm retired. I've taught at Arizona State. I was an assistant vice president there, taught at the University of Arizona, taught law and ethics, and retired from a university in California. The way we're going to be running this particular presentation right now, we want to run the survey very quickly, and then we're going to shift over to the PowerPoint slide program that we have set up for you today. So how long do we need? Okay, so we're giving the audience the ability to be able to get on the questions and answer these. And you'll have the opportunity, we have some cards also that will be placed on your table to ask any questions that come from the presentation that we have coming up in the next 45 minutes to an hour. So we want to make sure you run through these questions. It's called teamwork here. Does it have this thing over here? Do you know? Okay. Okay. So let me move on to the next part here. Which moves it? Okay. Apologies for that slight delay. Mr. Henderson, you've already made your preliminary remarks? You've already made your preliminary remarks? Okay.
I think it's really important to understand the real productive role that discussions can have on the future of our economic development program, the concept of leasing, only because, to me, we are not a productive society. To a minor degree, we are, and to that degree, I'm talking about the arts and craft community. They're the ones that gave us the wherewithal and the means to have the appreciation worldwide for the production that they do. But there's a wide range of industry. And one of the factors of production that we know that's incumbent upon all development is land. How do you acquire land to do that? The latest that we know actually grew out of the Navajo Nation's effort in pioneering on improving the business site leasing. I just want to take this excerpt from a recent publication. The HEARTH Act, which is an acronym for Helping Expedite and Advance Responsible Tribal Home Ownership Act of 2012, amended the Indian Long-Term Leasing Act of 1955 to provide tribes with options to independently approve their own tribal trust land leases under tribal leasing law. Further, the forerunner of this act was the Navajo Nation Trust Lands Leasing Act of 2000 that allowed the Navajo Nation to manage and administer leases that are consistent with the federal leasing regulation, where tribes may exercise the Act's self-management option in agriculture, business, renewable energy, public purpose, religion, educational, recreational, and residential leases after voluntarily adopting tribal leasing regulations that are consistent, quote unquote, with current federal leasing regulations at 25 CFR Part 162 and obtaining approval of those tribal regulations of the Secretary of the Interior. Don't mistake what most people are telling, especially from tribal employees that I talk to. They say that we have the authority to issue tribal leases. Not so fast. You still have to go through the process of getting the Great White Father to sign off on it. So let me go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Martinez to set you up with the reasons why we have to understand this concept a little bit better. So, Mr. Martinez?
Thank you all. So, I'm sorry I did not have enough copies to give everybody here. I think I passed out about 45 copies. But everything that you have a copy of is what's on the board over here. But the benefit of having that in front of you, if you come up with any ideas or thoughts or questions, then you can help be part of the exchange and the trade-off that we're going to have with the panel here momentarily. So there's on the website, there is a chart, a flow chart that describes in a flowchart format the many, many steps that a business goes through in the Navajo Nation business site. And what I have done is taken what's on the website and have broken it into 4 charts using Smart Draw software and formulated this example right here, how it breaks down. So what you have here in this very first of the 4 is the 8 steps, the 8 steps that you find from 1 to 8. And what you will find in your written format here, beginning with the RBDO, the very first step meets with a business applicant. That's the very first step. The last step, of course, is the RBDO final steps, and each one of these steps has a number of items and action items that have to be taken. And what I'm going to do over the next 3 slides is spell out what is next to each of these 8 primary steps. Some of you may be familiar with what happens and some of you may not. The point of today is really to cover these points here so you have kind of an idea of the framework. Along the way, number 2, business obtains land consent, business works with the RBDO to obtain site clearance, business negotiations with RDO, and so forth right here are RBDO, administrative SAS procedures, and down the line with in number 7, the BIA oversight action. So there are, excuse me. So we go to the next slide here, and what I've done is I have broken each of the 8 steps into more of the detail. So what you find in this particular slide is the various steps that occur in 1, 2, 3. So you'll see a variety of items that are here that you can probably read better in what you have perhaps in the written portion of that. But one thing that's very important here, and I want to ask Mr. Henderson to explain a little bit of what happens under the business contains land consent. And there's a couple of items here that you want to address.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. One of the things that we do in the Dineh Chamber of Commerce is that we work with the local chapters, and we've written a number of grants on their behalf. And the first thing that they alerted to us is that you have to go through the Club C. That's the acronym for Chapter Land Use Planning Committee. And then they recommend a particular document that's inscribed in probably a land use plan or a strategic plan. And then it goes to the Chapter Planning Committee, whose ultimate responsibility is to put your project on their agenda for approval before you get to the chapter resolution. So you have to really make that information available with a lot of Q&A. And that's really the starting level. And I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. And that factors into what we call the next sub-steps, which is what Mr. Martinez is talking about.
Okay, so please do refer to your resource there as well, because it's difficult to read even here on the board. So please have that additional, take a look at that of your experience. The next slide covers parts 4, 5, 4 and 5, and there's a number of action items that are here that I'd like for you to refer to your document, which may highlight some of your own experience with that. And then the last slide, again, covers items 6, 7, and 8, and there's a detailed items here, very detailed, which is very, very important. The actual document itself on the website gives you the whole list, detail of items that need to be covered. Our intention here today is to have a dialogue with a panel pretty soon where you'll present your background, your own experience, and then we'd like to have some audience interaction with you to ask some questions as well. So again, we begin, this next part goes to where the questions for all the panelists and attendees get involved. And let me, okay.
We start with pinpointing some possibilities of how development can occur at a local level, but you understand that a lot of these new things that we're introducing to you have got a long history, and we want to start with Geri Laughter.
That's a lot to take in when you're looking at that list behind me. And, I've seen it. The Kayenta Township process is a little different. We sort of remove some of those barriers that make it difficult and timely for those that are trying to get a business site lease. So the Kayenta Township, just give you a little history. Back in 2006, I think it was the Economic Development Committee authorized, and this is going verbatim from that resolution, authorized the delegation of approval of authority for business site leases to the Kayenta Township, except for those business site leases under the authority of the Navajo Nation Shopping Centers Corporation. As a result of this action, at present, the Kayenta Township is fully empowered with the authority to approve, manage, enforce, and monitor business site leases within the boundaries of the Kayenta Township. So the Kayenta Township is a withdrawn parcel of land which encompasses about 3,600 acres. So just within those boundaries, we pretty much detail out how the land is parceled, and we do this because we have zoning in our community. We adopted a comprehensive zoning ordinance back in 2012, and this helps guide us the commercial land that is available, education, home site lease areas, health, they're all designated within our boundaries. So when I have a business owner or business interest coming into my office, I talk to them about what their plan is, and I look at that comprehensive zoning to make sure it fits appropriately with where they want to put their business. And of course, you know that Kayenta is located on 2 U.S. interstates, Highway 163 and 160, which intersect. And we get a lot of tourists that go through this area. So our prime real estate, so-called real estate of commercial land is right along those areas along Highway 160 and 163. So with that, they'll come into my office and I talk to them about that, and we designate that site for them for 1 year. And Jermaine was talking about the development, because it's going to take you a while to understand maybe the tax information through the Navajo Nation and stuff. So we designate that site for 1 year for you. Gives you time to get your information together, maybe complete the registration of your business process through the Navajo Nation, find out about the tax information that you need your business to know. So after that's completed, say that the land is there and you need to have it surveyed. We get the survey completed. The one thing about the township that we think we have some benefits is that our land has already been surveyed. It's already gone through the EA process. We have a document that was completed back in 1990 for the entire 3,600 acres. So that has been completed. Another thing that benefits you as a business person coming in and looking for land is we already have the appraisal completed, and we do that every 5 years for our commercial development or commercial areas. And we are able to provide that information to you, so you're not waiting on BIA to do that appraisal process for you as well too. So once you get that done, we go through the process, and we do a general agreement that that's standard, and I believe the Navajo Nation uses something very similar. From that, we go through the negotiation of the lease, and Jermaine was talking about another thing that was really beneficial too. Say it's going to take you maybe 4 or 5 years to get the loan for your development, and you're going to need that much time to get the building up. We waive that time too. We initialize that as a development period where we don't charge you land lease fees as well. So it gives you time to get your building up, and it gives you time to go ahead and start developing your business. Thereafter, say maybe like the pandemic occurred, and the 2 years set your development back. We're able to work with you on that as well. So once we get that completed, and then we go ahead and we monitor, just making sure that you're in compliance with your businesses. And a lot of the things that some of the things that we do, I guess, with the Kayenta Township is we have some grants that help our businesses. We have a beautification grant, and it's one thing that I'm very, very proud that we do in Kayenta. This grant is available back to our business owners in the community. Say they need parking lot, they're able to use the grant to get pavement. They need to, say, repair the front of their facade of their building to make it more attractive. They're able to do that as well. So the beautification grant allows them to use that money to beautify their business, for their site, because we do receive a lot of tourism through the area. So we want to attract the tourism coming into the community. So those monies are available. One of the other things we talk about is infrastructure. And you guys talk about not having infrastructure. In our budget annually, we provide funds for infrastructure for businesses too. So we listen to those businesses, we listen to your needs, and although we're not 100% perfect in how we respond to your needs, we listen and we try to accommodate and help you along this business site leasing process. So I'll go ahead and end there because I think I'm taking a little too much time, but I'll go ahead and pass it along, and I'll see what other questions come up next. Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, describing my experience of operating our farm. So before I do that, I'm a market gardener, a farmer. I have a small business, and I have to be near my vegetables every day. So we're growing in greenhouses. You guys all know about climate change. We're all experiencing drought. We don't have enough water, okay? So can you think about which kind of permits I need to have in order to have to do my market gardening business? Well, you're under farming, so there could be an agricultural land use permit. And then we heard about the Club C, but that's inside the community, and usually most of our chapter houses have already allocated, they already have projects in mind. And so for me, with my experience is that wasn't on the table for our chapter house. And I didn't want to wait that long. I needed to start growing food because that's the basic need of a lot of our community. So one of the things that we did is I went through just my Nullah lady, and I told her, based on the traditional way, I want to be able to grow here, continue the work of what my Nullah man and all of that from my clan side as well. I want to continue to do this, can I get your home site lease? I want to do that. And that took a long time because I still had to petition and I still have to advocate with my aunts and my uncles. So that process, it took about 6 years to do that. And where I'm at, I'm outside where the infrastructure, usually in your communities, they have electricity, you have running water. Where I'm at is outside. And that's where a lot of our farmers and your ranchers, those that are still doing this kind of work, that's where they're located. So we don't have electricity or running water. So we're spending about 16 hours a week just to bring in our water for our plants. And we're only growing on a half an acre. And last year we were able to produce 12,000 pounds of vegetables. And this was also something that we did during the pandemic, is growing food and offering a food box. And I think those things, the basic level, that's important. And the process to get a home site lease is so challenging, and I don't understand how that's the way it is. I think just for me, having that trust with my Nullah lady and talking to my aunts and my uncles, that was enough for me to say, all right, I'm going to do this, and that was my promise to them. And I just went ahead and started the process and just said, okay, I'm going to do that. So that's kind of been my experiences, and the challenges is just going back and trying to find out from Window Rock, okay, what's the other process we're going to do? One of the other things I learned is that there's even 2 separate home site leases. There's one for BIA, which my Nullies had, and then there was another application, which again was with the Navajo Nation. They were not the same. And so they had to look at 2 different records just to find my Nullah lady and my Nullah man's paperwork. And so those kind of things are the other parts of these challenges that they're not even on the same page. There's separate files for a lot of this stuff. And then with the agricultural land use permit, there's 35 acres of old cornfield. I went to try to request for this agricultural land use permit, but I just got a memo from BIA saying that they were just gonna, they're in this process where they're not approving anything. And this letter, this memo that was given to me was from 2005. I was like, why hasn't anything happened? What's going on? So some of these things that we've done is just on our own. Like, a lot of small businesses here, you bootstrap, you look for whatever kind of monies, you ask people to help you. So one of the big situations is, we want to be able to grow more food because it's going to be needed in the future. What if there's another pandemic? So we raised our own money just to get a well, to be able to have a well drilled on our site, on the home site lease. So that would be us. That way we have the 16 hours that we can spend around our site here to grow more vegetables. And that's kind of a little bit about the water situation. And I think about the windmills, is that really, is there ways to make it to where there's solar on it instead of using the windmill? There's other ways, there's many ways that we can figure out how to have a lot of these changes implemented. So it's really hard to have a business growing food. I didn't know that.
Thank you very much, Cherilyn. And just want to make a comment with regards to Geri, your comment, and that is you have your unique business site lease structure. And that may be different from some of the other processes that other people go through. So we want to keep that in mind because there may be some questions from the audience that will ask how and why and how that relates to the other points to that. So I think the next one would be Taylor. Nick.
Yeah, sure. So first off, with shopping centers, we are a corporation of the Navajo Nation. And because we're a corporation, we have a little more flexibility and leeway in how to navigate certain challenges and circumstances. So as mentioned earlier, we oversee 9 commercial retail properties within the Navajo Nation, across the entire Navajo Nation, from Crown Point all the way to Tuba City. And we are landlords. We just provide the land, the space, a building for businesses to conduct their operations. And from that, we derive our revenue from the collection of rental payments. We just receive revenue from the form of rent. And our job is to essentially just provide space and collect rent and make sure businesses maintain steady and safe operations. And because we're a corporation, we do have a shareholder. So with any corporation, there is a shareholder group, and in this case, the shareholder group is the Resources and Development Committee. So they're our shareholder, and that's how we're connected to them by the Navajo Nation government. And with RDC, we do provide updates to them, and we do work with them on some matters here and there. But I'm looking at the questions here behind me. Is for the most part is, what can RDC possibly do to help improve economic conditions within the Navajo Nation? And it's easy to get lost because Navajo is so large, but I would say, what can RDC do to focus on growth areas within the Navajo Nation? Within the Navajo Nation, we have growth areas such as Tuba City, Chinle, Kayenta, Shiprock. Those are, and even including maybe Winter Rock. So those will be our growth areas. But what we're seeing as a corporation is that a lot of these growth areas do want to expand, add new businesses, but the challenge is always access to commercial land. Geri just mentioned she has 3,600 acres plus of commercial land available. That's great, that's awesome. That's 643 miles worth of land she has. That's pretty impressive. And for us, that's our challenge in growing Navajo. We can't bring new additional retail businesses to Navajo because we don't have the land availability for commercial use. And when I'm thinking and saying commercial use, how much acreage does the area need? Well, these days, retailers, big retailers, regional, national, need at least 100 acres withdrawn for commercial use. Now, some chapters, they fall and prefer 20, 30 acres, 50 acres, 60 acres, 80. But those are small amounts for when you want to do long-term development. You need at least 100 acres. And one area we've been focusing on is in Chinle. They have withdrawn 100 acres for commercial use, which is great. I'm looking forward to developing that area. So those are some of the things with RDC we'd want to recommend, is how do they go back to the chapters and look at land accessibility, and how do we get these individuals that hold grazing rights to work with the chapter and also these businesses that want to start up and put up a new building. And as mentioned, with the business site leasing process with shopping centers, we're not there to provide a lot of red tape for us. It's just a simple two-step process where it's a two-way transaction with us. You just submit an application and you just sign a lease. It's just 2 steps. In between that, it's all on your end to do your own due diligence. You're a business person, you know your pro formas, you know the laws of the Navajo Nation. If not, you can go find out what the laws are, what kind of requirements are, what kind of permits you need, and working with NTUA and other enterprises, that's all on your end. And if you're needing financing, you can work with the banks, CDFIs, and DED for those sources of access to capital. And for us, again, we're just strictly to be there for a landlord to provide the space, help you with the on-site utilities, and help you with your operations. And typically, we have pad sites. Pad sites can be developed if you have all your ducks in a row within 12 months or less. So that's not too long at all to get a development going here on Navajo. With Kayenta Taco Bell, they were up and going in 8 months. So it happened pretty quickly.
Thanks very much, Nick. What I'm going to now is a part where we really engage the audience, you, the participants, and we go through what some of you know is a 4-step SWOT analysis format. It doesn't really mean anything other than let's look at the question. On your table, you have those cards. So if you have written questions from what you have heard so far, or questions that that you came with today, please go ahead and write those down, because we want to go through these 4 questions here, question 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and see what your reaction is, what your questions are, and then also pose the question to the panel, so we can have some kind of exchange here.
Mr. Martinez, let me add a little bit more to what you just instructed the audience with. You have heard about the Hearth Act. You have heard about the flowchart. You had some direct testimony. For example, we've got some lawyers in the crowd here. Direct evidence about what the experiences have been, both contemporary as well as historically, by different organizations like Township, which is now under a different model or formula, as I understand, and then Nick's organization, which is a tribal enterprise or a corporation, as he mentioned. And so what we wanted to do in this particular section is to engage your input. We want to hear from you. So we'd like to start off at the same time. You can think about the SWOT analysis. The S stands for the strength, and the weakness for the W, the threats and the opportunities. Don't mix them up. If you can speak to those 4 areas based on the information we provided you thus far, that will trigger some of your thinking on your personal challenges that you have been facing with. So right now we're going to open for questions, and Mr. Martinez is going to go ahead and recognize you. Maybe we would go ahead and parcel out maybe 2 questions to each of the panelists. So do we have a question, and perhaps any one of the panelists might be able to go ahead and volunteer to respond and answer your question?
So question number 4, if I could just read it out loud. From your experience and perspective, what do you consider the positive aspects or the strengths of the business site lease process? What are the good things about it, the great things about it, the real benefits? And I illustrate here a couple of comments or requirements that are part of the process when the RBDO meets with the business applicant at the beginning, and they also review the business plan in that step. is there anything there in the process that you have experience with? I'm asking the audience right now, and then we're going to ask the panel to see if you have any experience with that would relate to that. But essentially, it's the beginning of the process. So does anybody in the audience have it? I would provide the microphone for you if you do. Okay, I have one taker back here.
Good afternoon. Yate.
Oh,
My name is Emmett Curley. I'm a former chapter official from Cameron, just down the road near Grand Canyon. I have a question. It's a long-range question, but actually could also be implemented by other growth areas, such as those locations that was just now mentioned. The question is, it's for any one of you. Could be, it's a multi-part answer, I suppose, and either one or any one of you or one at a time could answer this. Do you think that the Navajo Nation can one day enable chapters to implement their own business site leasing program, along with what you mentioned right now, and additionally to these topics as well? That might include land banking, land packaging, land development, building development, building operations, building renovations, and site development. Thank you.
excellent question. I think Geri wants to go ahead and respond.
Okay, thank you for that question. I can answer the first part about being able to implement your own business site leasing plans. And from what I understand, if you are an LGA certified chapter, you are able to, and you have the ability to accomplish that. How the Kayenta Township went through the process, of course, is they used the Navajo Nation's business site leasing plan. They used that as a template, and then they looked at what things in there that they identified that were beneficial to the community. And I always say this, all our communities across the Navajo Nation are different. So all our plans are not going to be cookie cutter. They're going to be different, and they're going to be to the, to what your community is like. So I think the ability is there that you do that. We went through the process. I believe our business site leasing management plan was put in place in the early 2000s or maybe mid 2000s. And just recently, we revised those plans. We revised them, and they were updated in January of 2020. So, it's a working document, I believe, and it's something that we can continuously go back and change so that it benefits our businesses and our community as we change and grow as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it kind of does for the current system, but I'm kind of looking into the future more. What I'm thinking about when I'm saying business development is to include such things as developments for residential units, offices, retail, warehouses, apartments, hotels, mixed use, and commercial. All these various, it's just not like one type of business I'm looking at, maybe as a whole, as a community development type of situation. Thank you.
So I'd like to answer that and also talk about a little bit of a case study. One of the things that we have to think about is water. So last summer, most of you might know that Delcon is getting a medical center built, and so we had to, the chapter officials and everybody had to advocate from Loop to have a water line brought into Delcon. So my understanding is they did a lot of eminent domain along the way. And then there's houses that are put in there for the medical doctors and all of these individuals who are gonna live there. And what had happened is the people who are working on the hospital to keep the dust down, they were supposed to go get water from the chapter house or from Winslow. Somebody told them that it was okay to get water from the agricultural tank. So they went ahead and got free water. And then they were pumping out so much of it that by this time last year, the tanks were empty. So all of the ranchers and all of the farmers, including us, were like, well, how are we supposed to get water? And then the NTUA shut down and limited water. You were only able to get about 2,000 gallons, every month. That was it. So before you really start thinking about how big you want to get, and I know a lot of our families and relatives from urban communities want to come home, you need to think about the water first, because my understanding is there's not enough of it. And you can see it in Page, it's already way down. It's so low. You look over here in all of the different dams, you know, the bigger cities are gonna, there's already, I guess, their water rights, they're looking at that stuff. So it's very good that we want to do all this. I want to grow my farm, but I have to think of where I'm going to get the water first. So that would be one of the things when you talk about long-term, think about that first, fix that, then you can work backwards, and then you can really say, okay, well, would Hopetail, because they have to use so many much gallons to wash, you know, all of the bedding every day. So those are some of the things to think about before we get that far.
So that's a very good segue a little bit to the question that has to do, water you're talking about, has to do with, in the SWOT analysis, that would be your threat. As an external threat to what you're trying to do. So you've answered three questions in one, which is great. I think that is really excellent to have that kind of dialogue. I want to go back.
Mr. Martinez, let me sort of reflect what the answers have been. And what we are hearing here is a response and an experience, the way I hear it, and maybe some of you captured it, is that we understand that business site leasing is one process. That process is primarily responsibility lodged in the Division of Economic Development. Now, Cherilyn just shared with you the responsibility that probably lodges in the Department of Water Department. Do you think those two entities work together to make community development happen? Or, as we've been hearing for years and years, they're in silos. They're very comfortable with it. I've had personal experiences with it when I was working for the Navajo Nation government a long time ago. It has not changed at all. And it gets tougher and tougher as each new leadership comes into play. Now, so the question here is there a positive feature in the business site leasing practices that is now in practice? And there's one part of it, which is the Navajo Nation, their own leasing of 2,000, and the second part is the Hearth Act. The Hearth Act's primary understanding that I have is that it's supposed to shorten it. Washington so we have some really reflective understanding of the processes that I think was adequately covered by the Attorney and Justice Austin here this morning. So go ahead and think through those and make sure you make about at least one or two understanding as you understand it on each of these questions of the SWOT analysis process. Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
You're welcome. Nick, do you have comments on what has been exchanged to this point?
Yeah, yes, I do have some comments. So good points from all the panelists here. Good question too. But I would say push forward in your developments. Don't just think, we have the same model, we had to fight for our water too. They're looking at us saying, A water rights, Kisha. What are you guys going to do with those? The development, and we're going to turn around and we're going to say, oh, the development, no, oh, or we're going to say, oh, the development at then. The development at then. Okay, the water rights and the we're going to use it towards other areas. So push forward with your plans, your development, and your real estate development. You're going to need a team, so go ahead and build your real estate team. LGA chapters can build whatever they want and however they want. It's up to you all. So don't just limit yourselves. Push forward because it's just not for, it's NOSCO for kids too.
Okay, I'm in the back of the room because I have another question follow-up from one of the participants.
Yate. Shade Darlene Pino Chiero Ashe Chino Kia da Chero to the Chini da Chanel. Aro that's I use a sigida. Ashe in Slot Chisha Chin Kia Ani da Chero to the Chin da Chanel. Eggs in Nashadet is Tote, Alamo, New Mexico. I could end the Nazis on Navajo Mountain, the chapter vice president, Adi. I could also get a day near Adi and Stra. Hashin Zaja Shishan, and the Adi shall Calhoun Stempelkin Snani Bilkoja. The Dineh Chamber of Commerce, the Kushin Hinachak at Aji Nitrako. Ado Veterans Organization, although 6 years ago, Nani Nago. Here at the Navajo Mountain. Ako lago anda has egigi yehijia daltketo akwa notraton hete no kui halt koje hadilia naltsonda naltsosandan tehita. Ako kwa nadish kide ya de kuishi baha zi benda kwa attorney general Mr. Austin. Adole ya holne anhinit edo anhitit enoin hichati o chko bohonit long binishlon ye hat la na quinto ya yaltke akodin alsana tashkidiki ke ya certified chapter non-certified shide sizini wantes cancer alhinilt ensen here with Navajo Mountain we're non-certified. I could end yo yasht. Just because we're non-certified, we're just as equal as certified chapter. How a certified chapter is a lot of it deals with accounting, based on our economic development. No by Ako alhilt ego certified or non-certified. So alhilt obante cancer she had a quinton. She is in your hotel once cancer. Kugoshi after reservation, the Kugoshi Nacha. Because about 6-7 years into my husband and I, after retiring, we moved back to the reservation. Ako Nihiquilsa, Velganic etch in NATO at all, in Lito Pesto, tax Nahalia, Kita, the Alscocher. Bohil a cognite, quad Nanhiniki, Kenya, Bekai, Nani, Nago, Sa Hote, Tito Hajorki, Tinta Nadland, Dona hat Ato, Adel, Hilt Ada Oane, Adoikit in the house, Anif Toto, Adel, Hilt Ada. I could aid in Hinazis an, she adot ice in a shada. In the age 6 years, Shinacha Ade, though Elhonson, though she slashed the Hossandalto. I could end the inna yolieto, Nikita Nepati, Ninikito, Benigesh, chapter vice president, Bandish, Watata, Ea veterans, Beniye, Ea Hashilto, business, Hashita, Shidosh business, Hoto, Latins, Ayanta, Kansaki, Eben Nasha Hashilto, high and Tahit, Adonas, Nadi Kato Nasi, Nasik, Ea, Ikato, Chokot, Hata Sitzi. Non-certified, though I'm glad you mentioned that, madam from Kayenta. General Gajin Tagoshi did a Navajo Nation, dig it and Hilton. How shall Navajo Nation, but that teacher? She am ready revolution, I don't know. But today I'm ready to say that the Navajo Nation for Mediki. Highland Hilto Alhin, Hilto Tato Ilnitsen, now certified Nitliniki.
Excuse me,
I could
Ken,
oya ansis.
we're on a time frame.
I could oya nadish kito litida. Hagila atza, non-certified and certified. Thank you.
Anybody wants to answer this, panelist? She's asking about certifications impact on business site leasing and development. I presume is what the question refers to. Anybody? To elhausen da dane, kode tanhas tanigi da beta hausen da. Ako here do queen hichain zigi shi ya do bansada the cost of do. Mr. Martinez, are you referring to the weaknesses or the benefits now?
The comments that are coming in are basically overflowing from one to the other, so I'm going to go back and forth. There are two other comments on the floor that I wanted to go back to. Do you have an additional comment at the moment from anybody? Okay, I have one over here on the right.
Mr. Martinez, I've got another person over here as well. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this question. So I guess really quick, the quick question would be for non-certified chapters. Are there any encouragements and how for them to progress their communities for non-certified chapters? And then I guess a secondary question would be revenues. Are any of them coming from the township and going back into, or are they going into the Navajo Nation? For township systems, your revenues, are they going back to the Navajo Nation from the business site leases?
So with the township, we have business site leases that are specifically with the township. Those leases go into the revenue of the Kayenta Township. There are some leases that are still with the Navajo Nation, so they make their lease payments to the Navajo Nation. So that's usually how it's structured. If you sign your business site lease agreement, it goes to the township. And there are still some leases out there that are still with the BIA as well. So you're actually dealing with 3 types of business site leases. So with the BIA, understand those still go to the Navajo Nation as well. Thank you.
Okay, everyone has cards. Whatever we don't get done during this session, which we have another 15 or 20 minutes, we want to take those cards from you because we will answer you afterwards. We'll do some kind of a follow-up from the Dineh Chamber or the Navajo Entrepreneurship Coalition. Yes, sir.
Anybody from that table?
Good afternoon. I originally wanted to respond to Mr. Curley's question about chapters having the authority to have business site leasing authority, and I just want to know that we come from Shanto, and we have had business site leasing authority for 14 years so far. So there are chapters. Tuba City was another one. I don't know if they still have business site leasing authority, but currently I know that Shanto, we do have business site leasing authorities, and we do approve business site leasing. And I've got my leadership here, my chapter officials, our chapter managers here. She oversees our office, and I am currently the chairperson for our business management unit who approve business site leasing within our chapter jurisdiction. I just wanted to let him know that our chapter does, and then also the comment on your question number 6, the benefits of it. And that's being number 1, being governance certified, gives you a lot of leeway on being able to do this and being able to have that autonomy to be able to have control of your community and being able to have direction on how you want your community to grow and be able to be a part of the process rather than having BIA do it, rather than having the mother government do it. But within our community, we plan and we approve and we decide what we want in our community. So that's all I want to say. That was our benefit of being governance certified, and being governance certified for over 21 years, and then having business site leasing authority for over 14 years.
Okay, thank you. I think from direct experience, we have a chapter representative that responded to one of the questions regarding chapter's ability to go ahead and execute their own decision-making authority. Now, there's one back here, Mr. Martinez.
Okay, thank you. The whole process of the SWOT analysis, whatever you're doing well, you want to continue to do it. Whatever is not working, then you want to be able to do things to change that.
My name is Daryl Ahastin, Nahat Atzi Lam, Commission President. The business site lease Hatnanigi Bayatiki, the sloth, the strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat iki. Business site lease, business site leasing iki dotako butchinaho. I don't know what the process of correcting it goes. It's just a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape. To get business site lease. I don't know how to a certified chapter. The key years, we're trying to get our business site leasing authority. It's just a lot of red tape to me. For instance, we have Navajo Nation Shopping Center. Almost 5 years ago, we've been working with commissioners. We finally got it built almost 5 years ago. Grand opening is to this day, we do not have a bona fide lease to occupy that building. What we have is day one, they did an emergency occupancy lease to open the buildings, to put it in operation. For the last 5 years, I understand that a brand new business coming in, you give them a little bit of leeway on the first few years about rent. But 5 years, we have not received any rent anywhere. Although the way it is handled is that portion, 38 acres, was purchased by the federal government through Office of Navajo Hopi Indian Relocation. E ane Kayenta yisni. Ado koja Navajo DED deko eya aka natjaho kinit na yabaha wan ha alyande jo kaiki has leasiki to hajota. That's in Dickies, or you Navajo Nation Shopping Centers, or near Yen, so it's got Nico. Or you that's in nature in Dutch. That's one thing that we're having issues with. The other one is Fort Defiance Indian Health Board. We used to have an industrial building. So they got that building for $1. And it's in operation now. But they want to do an amendment to the lease. 10 acres. That's one doctor baganda nita nico. And the thing that I noticed in there that they want to build, yet there is no study for water. Is there enough water to sustain the occupancy of those houses? So that's one thing that they put in that amendment to the lease over there. So we have a whole lot of issues. I wish Navajo Nation would just give us our business site leasing authority so we can do it ourselves and not look over towards the window rock, give us advice. We can run it ourselves. Go with that. So, thank you.
Any comments from the panel?
Mr. Taylor, I believe, wants to respond.
Good to know that the Sanders Shopping Center is still in that situation where they took the ONEAR process, mandatory assignment of land, and also the transfer of land from fee to trust status. And for shopping centers, that is not our asset. That's under the management and control of the Division of Economic Development. So there are still those instances where the Division of Economic Development plays a major role still within the business site leasing process across the entire Navajo Nation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Okay,
Is there another
I
question?
have one follow-up question here.
Yes, good afternoon. Sha'in Shiahegi A. Raymond Nopa Hinsha. I work with the shopping centers. Di ba yel tiki kudo ya chon anigi di that nanish han shado kinasi nel kaya. Ba chahad na wal yahegi business site lease. So kastane that's so it zata na khay arin So it's been in existence from the federal government for 17 years now. It's been granted to the Navajo Nation. But to this day, it hasn't been that's probably one of the main things that's happening to this day is when the Secretary of Interior gave the paperwork to the Navajo Nation, Secretary of Interior President Bishop Bob Israelia. So we haven't gotten back to that. So I think that the big problem is that we're dealing with a federal bureaucracy rule that's been in place, that's just been handed over to us, and we're still fighting over what the federal government has given us. Us, ourselves, the Neni Yahegi, we haven't taken the initiative to really just take it back apart. So, is that we have to take that back apart and so I just wanted to point that out. It's been in existence for 17 years. That authority is here, but we haven't made any amendments to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're down to our last question, which is intended for both the participants, you, the attendees, and also for the panel. The final question is, now that you know more about the business site leasing process in the Navajo Nation and the several challenges that have been identified during today's panel and audience conversation, what are your final thoughts? We're looking for solutions, for some things that we can take forth and then bring it back in some kind of action form. So I'm going to start out with the audience, and I'm going to end it back with you. Again, the question here that's on the board is, once you have reviewed and listened to everyone who's talked, are there some thoughts that you have, some final thoughts you would like to add? I'm going to go around. We have maybe 5 minutes max here, and then I need to get back to the panel.
Thank you. Again, this development site here, the casino, the hotel, the restaurants, and other entertainment areas in this facility is a really good example of how it came to be, how it was once private land, I suppose, then purchased by the tribe, turned into trust land, and then I guess there were agreements made to where certain permits were allowed, such as alcohol permits and taxes and such not. Good example here. The other one that I'm thinking is at the other extreme was the development that was discussed at one point in time. It still might be in the backs of some people's mind, is the Colorado River confluence development, the gondola and whatnot down into the canyon. That's the other extreme. That brings up the topic of land speculators, real estate speculators. When they find a piece of property, they may renovate it, they may develop the land, they may develop the building pad, and all the permits are required. It may be at a certain stage, they may buy it at a low cost, then they may flip it, not to create value, but just out of pure speculation on profit. That's what I'm afraid of. And that's what the outside world sees a potential to be had on Navajo land. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other final comments from anybody of the attendees here? Okay, I'm going to go back to the panel.
Maybe what we can do is start winding down the session, because we've got about 10 to 15 minutes open. And then Anthony and I are going to go ahead and make our closing remarks on this particular panel here. Want to respond? What your thoughts are?
Well, my thoughts are that I have not worked in the capacity of a Navajo Nation employer or with the Navajo Nation government. So I came to the township not having a lot of the knowledge that I had to learn about the business site leasing process. But there is a lot of work. You have to listen to your businesses. You have to listen to what their needs are and try to work with them, because they are what makes your community grow. So I do think there's still a lot of growth that needs to occur in our communities with respect to business site leasing. Thank you.
What I think is all the knowledge that we need is already here in the room. And, you know, there are ways to navigate all of this. So we have a delegate, he said that he would be willing to help us, to help with business site leases to make it easier. So that was what I heard from the last session. So I will be bugging the council delegate, and I think a lot of that has to be our own advocacy on our own. We have to just start it. That's what I did, because, you know, if not, you're just going to get mad, you're just going to be frustrated, it's not going to go anywhere. And I think, on the other hand, Navajo Nation, you know, people who are in the offices, you need to come visit the businesses where they have a business. You have to come visit us so you know what we have to deal with. We drive down bumpy roads all the time. You know, I visited where Jermaine's, you know, where she works. I know what she has to deal with. It gives me a perspective, and I have compassion for her work. So you need to come visit us. You know, it's not going to be the other way around. You bring the paperwork to us so we can fill it out, so we don't have to give you, you know, pay out our gas money. Come visit us. You know, that's what we want. You know, I'm done with all of this other stuff. And this is the time to do it. You know, this is an election year. There are many people who are going to be willing to stand up and try something new. You know, we'll see what happens. You know, August 2nd, if these people, whoever gets elected, is it going to be the same group, or are there going to be new people? This is our chance to do that. And moving forward, everything is about a vote. You know, Amazon became labor. So that, to me, shows there's power in the regular people. And that's where I'm going to put my opportunity is in you to help me, so we can all help each other, because you all have the knowledge. You all know where the opportunities are. So that's where I think we should work together.
My closing comments are just that shopping centers manages grocery-anchored commercial shopping centers. And it shouldn't just be one group doing all this, take it upon yourselves and form new companies to develop not only new shopping centers, but warehouse centers, distribution centers, residential units, office space. So an office space is desperately needed on Navajo, and if a group can come together and develop office space, you could make quite a bit of profit. Just putting that out there. But thank you for the discussion. Kahat.
Great big hand for the panel. Thank you very much. Great big hand for all of you for participating.